Let's talk about the boutique Blu-Ray Racket. I'm not here to dunk on the movies. Honestly, most of the titles these labels rescue from obscurity deserve a second or 10th look. I'm here to talk about the price tag that comes attached once a label like Criterion or Arrow Video gets involved. Let's start with Seven Samurai. If you want that on Blu-ray, there is one name on the Monopoly board, Criterion, and it'll run you a cool $100. Not on sale, that's your starting bid. And cue the response, just wait for the sale, bruh! Criterion's got a sale every July and November! Sure, let's pretend patience is a luxury. Even during the sale, Seven Samurai still costs $50. So you're essentially being told that a heavily compressed black and white film from 1954, available digitally for under $10, is worth half a Benjamin just to own a physical copy. That's not preservation. That's gatekeeping nostalgia. And Criterion isn't alone. Scream Factory, Arrow Video, Kino Lorber, they've all carved out their own niches. Scream specialized in B movies from the 70s and 80s. Metal Storm, TerrorVision, The Video Dead. These were the kinds of movies that you'd rent from the video store after you'd already rented everything else. Or maybe the last copy of Tremors got snatched 5 minutes before you walked in, and you didn't want to go home empty-handed. So you grabbed Doll Man, or Metal Storm, or TerrorVision, and let's be honest, how many of those movies did you only rent once and never think about again? It's probably more than you care to admit. Now they're back, dressed up in boutique packaging, priced like prestige cinema. And that's fine if you're chasing nostalgia. But when these labels treat every forgotten VHS rental like it's a lost masterpiece and charge $35 to $40 for the privilege, you've got to ask, are we preserving film history or just monetizing our childhood desperation? Arrow's been branching out too. RoboCop, Deep Blue Sea, even stuff like The Good, The Bad, The Weird, and I love that movie, don't get me wrong. It's a South Korean Western that absolutely rips. But when Arrow puts that out, suddenly you're shelling out $35 to $40 for a title that mainstream distributors wouldn't touch. That's the secret signal. Once boutique labels claim it, that's your red flag that there's not a big market for the movie. If there were, you'd get a basic $14.99 Blu-ray at Best Buy and call it a day. And it's not just obscure horror or international titles. Arrow recently dropped 4K Blu-rays of Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X for $50 each. Let's put that into context. These were the Friday the 13th entries released by New Line Cinema when they were trying to set up Freddy vs. Jason. Jason Goes to Hell ends with Freddy's glove dragging Jason's masks underground. Jason X was made as a rights retainer while Freddy vs. Jason languished in development hell. I bought a Blu-ray set of the first 8 Friday the 13th movies, that was Paramount's run, for $15, maybe $20 tops. Years ago, I picked up a DVD double pack of Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X for $8 brand new. So why, as a Friday the 13th fan, am I expected to spend an extra $100 just to finish the franchise in 4K or on Blu-ray? And let's be real, Jason X is often the most maligned entry in the series. Arrow knows completists will bite. They know fans want the full set on Blu-ray or 4K, especially since the only complete Blu-ray box set that included all the films, the Steel 10 edition released in 2013, is long out of print and now fetches $150 to $200 on the secondhand market. Shout Factory did a deluxe edition in 2020 that's still in print, but at the time I didn't bite. Economically, I couldn't justify spending $150 just to get Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X on Blu-ray when I just bought the first 8 for a fraction of that. That's not curation, that's extortion. Take The Great Silence as another example. It's widely considered one of the best spaghetti westerns ever made. Incredible score, haunting ending, powerful themes, and yet, ask someone on the street if they've ever heard of it? Crickets. If you want to own it, that'll be $30 to $40 thanks to a boutique label. Again, if it were The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, sure, I get it, cultural cachet matters. But when a film is obscure because it didn't get the distribution or mainstream love it deserved, why are we punishing fans with premium prices? It's like getting charged extra because you care. Now look, I'm not above buying boutique releases, and let me give you a personal example. Criterion's release of Night of the Living Dead. That film's been floating in the public domain purgatory for decades. Practically every release before Criterion's looked like it was transferred from a moldy bootleg tape found in the back of someone's basement. but Criterion actually restored it, frame by frame. They took a cultural milestone, something that had been visually degraded for generations, and gave it the love and care it deserved. So yes, I bought it. I paid the premium. And in that case, they earned it. It wasn't just a disc, it was a resurrection. But then you get stuff like the Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. And let me be clear, I love Life Aquatic. It's my favorite Wes Anderson film. Quirky, melancholic, loaded with emotional undercurrents beneath the pastel whimsy. But that doesn't mean I'm dropping $40 for the Criterion Blu-ray. Why? Because that release feels more like prestige packaging than preservation. It's a movie that's already easily accessible. Clean prints, digital streaming, basic Blu-rays, you've got options. Criterion isn't saving Life Aquatic. They're dressing it up for the collector's shelf. So my line is this. If a boutique label is restoring a film from obscurity, from poor transfers or forgotten prints, and they're the only ones doing it justice, then yeah, I'll consider the splurge. But if they're just slapping a title that already has mass accessibility into a slipcase with a pretty booklet and charging me twice the standard rate, that's not curation, that's couture. Now, I know I've been dunking on them a lot during this video, but let's pause for a moment and do an in defense of boutique labels when they actually do the work. Okay? Criterion's release of Carnival of Souls is a great example. That film's been in the public domain since its release due to a missing copyright notice, and it's been bootlegged to death. Every DVD release looks like it was sourced from third-generation VHS tape found in a flea market. Anyone with a computer and a DVD burner could legally sell their own copy. Criterion stepped in, found the best surviving elements, and gave it the clarity and respect it deserved. Same goes for One-Eyed Jacks, Marlon Brando's sole directorial effort. Another public domain title, it languished for years in poor transfers and bargain bin editions, but Criterion gave it the full restoration treatment, cleaning up the VistaVision photography, stabilizing the color, and presenting it in a way that finally honors Brando's vision. Even Martin Scorsese plays the restoration for reviving a film that had been visually neglected for decades. And then there's the Rant Westerns, 5 films directed by Bud Bedecker. These were lean, low-budget B-westerns from the 1950s starring Randolph Scott. Films like Ride Lonesome, Buchanan Rides Again, and The Tall T. Criterion's 4K restoration of that set has been widely praised for its clarity and care. The Tall T was selected by the National Film Registry in 2000 for preservation, and Scorsese himself singled it out, calling attention to the fact that it was a cheap B-western being preserved with the same reverence as prestige cinema. That's the kind of cultural reappraisal that matters. Same goes for The Gold Rush, Chaplin's 1925 masterpiece, a 100-year-old film. Criterion didn't just slap it on a disc and call it a day. They hunted down the best surviving elements, cleaned them up, and gave us a version that probably looks better than it did in its original theatrical run. That's not nostalgia, that's cultural stewardship. If you want to see what that process actually looks like, check out how Criterion Collection brings movies back from the dead, which walks through the restoration of Hitchcock's Foreign Correspondent, or watch The Man Who Knew Too Much restoration demonstration, where they show how warped prints from the 1930s were scanned, stabilized, and revived. That's the kind of work that deserves compensation. When a label goes beyond packaging and actually preserves film history, especially public domain titles that have been visually abused for decades, that's when the price tag starts to make sense. But that's not the norm. And here's something that's rarely addressed, especially by the physical media collector channels flooding YouTube. How many of these movies are actually getting watched? We see it every sale season. Criterion's 50% off sale? Fucking stampede at your local Barnes & Noble. Kino Lorber's 4 for $44? Feeding frenzy. Collectors dropping hundreds on stacks of discs like they're hoarding cultural capital. And yet, you peek at their shelves 6 months later, and half those films haven't been cracked open once. You think anyone's actually sat through the entire Road 2 series with Bing Crosby and Bob Hope recently? Or cracked open Kurosawa's The Hidden Fortress that they swore they'd study for its Star Wars DNA, but haven't touched past the menu screen? Or Sofia Coppola's The Virgin Suicides, which they claim is essential cinema, but really, it just adds that moody aesthetic next to Lost in Translation and gives their shelf melancholic street cred. At some point, it stops being about watching and starts being about showcasing. These aren't shelves, okay? Let's put that clearly. These aren't shelves. They're trophy cases. Physical media used to mean ownership, connection, and access without algorithms. Now, it's about proving you're part of some elite preservationist club. You've got to ask, are these films being collected or curated for clout? And that leads us to the cult-like mentality surrounding Criterion. There's a great breakdown of this in The Cult of the Criterion Collection, which explores how Criterion has built itself into a brand that's not just about film preservation, it's about prestige. And that prestige can be very toxic. If you limit yourself to only watching films in the Criterion Collection, you're not refining your taste. You're narrowing your understanding of film history. You're deliberately dumbing yourself down, because there's value in Star Crash, in For Your Hide Only, in Plan 9 from Outer Space, in Invasion of the Neptune Men. Okay, these movies might be quote-unquote bad by traditional standards, but they're entertaining, they're culturally fascinating, and they're part of the cinematic conversation. A bad movie can be just as valuable as a good one. The real question is it entertaining? If we only elevate what Criterion is willing to archive, we're going to miss out on entire genres, styles, and voices that don't fit the mold. We're going to ignore the messy, weird, campy, low-budget brilliance that shaped film culture just as much as Seven Samurai or Night of the Living Dead did. And before you ask, no, I will not pay $40 for a Blu-ray of For Your Hide Only or Star Crash. That's extortion pricing. I'll watch it, I'll love it, I'll talk about it, but I'm not funding boutique inflation for the sake of irony. Now, to be fair, Criterion has also given us the Criterion Closet videos, and those can be genuinely entertaining, not because of the brand, but because of the people who walk into that closet. When you get guests like Roger Corman, Bill Hader, John Waters, or Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, it's fun to see what they pick, what they talk about, and how their tastes reflect their work. It's not the closet, it's the conversation. And that's what film should be, a conversation, not a curated echo chamber. And let me be clear, this video is not about entitlement. I get that boutique labels restore films. They remaster, they do commentary tracks, they curate essays, they build slipcases with cover art that looks like it belongs in the MoMA. That takes work, that takes funding. But some of these releases feel like they're less about sharing cinema and more about guarding it behind the velvet rope. There's this unspoken assumption that if you really care about film, you'll pay anything. And maybe that's the problem. Passion shouldn't be exploited. Loving film shouldn't require a financial hazing ritual. Should people buy these releases? Sure, if they want to. Should it cost nearly $50 for an older movie with limited mainstream impact? That's the question. So now I want to hear from you. Where do you personally draw the line when it comes to collecting physical media? What's the last boutique Blu-ray you picked up, and was it worth it? Or is your shelf starting to feel more like a flex than a film archive? Sound off in the comments. And until next time, never let your shelf become a museum for media you couldn't afford, and if you do cave and buy it, at least make sure it's one hell of a transfer. Your wallet might forgive you, your shelf might even thank you. Just don't forget, movies are meant to be watched, not worshipped.